family. It's your sister, Reverend Jocelyn here, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. If this is your first time tuning in, we welcome you. We're so glad that you are here and want you to know that we're committed to helping you strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and discover a sense of community. And we do so through a variety of ways by connecting you with a team of Christian counselors and offering trauma healing trainings across the country. You can learn about these resources and so much more by visiting our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. Now, today we are talking about a subject that affects all of us, and that is time. Are we spending our time wisely? As I think about this question, I was reminded of an experience that I had recently. Unfortunately, not too long ago, I've had some car trouble because, these new cars nowadays, and my car's not even that new, but everything is electric. So I couldn't get my car to close its trunk. And because of that, my whole car battery died. And so I'm like, oh, man. And so I've had to borrow my mom's car and use it while I'm getting my car fixed. And so when I got in her car, and I was driving. I was actually taking a business call at the time, and we were coordinating a time for our next meeting. I was thinking that I was running late. And when I mentioned, oh, yeah, it's 11 o'clock, the person who I was talking to was like, no, it's not. We still got time. And I'm like, wait, what? And then I realized that my mom has set the car clock 20 minutes ahead. And then I just chuckled and laughed because I thought back about how my mom has done that my entire life. When she would take me to school as a kid, when I was in grammar school, I would always see the clock set ahead because it was her way of just kind of tricking herself to say, okay, let me move faster so that I can get there, on time. So I'm not running late. So it just in her way was like a mind jujitsu type trick to manipulate time so she can feel like she had less time and operate with a sense of urgency. And, when I was a kid, I never understood that. I was like, why does she do that? But it makes sense to me now in some type of way because, I think about how we might approach life differently if we operated as if we had less time than we really have. If we operated with a sense of urgency for the things that matter. And that's what I want to talk about today. Are we spending our time wisely? And I actually want to change my language from spend to invest. And I'm going to explain why. When we think about how many seconds that we actually have in a day, it's 86,400 seconds that we have in a single day. And when we think about how that time is used, obviously we have to sleep. Please rest, get your, 6 to 8 hours preferably in. But outside of that, let's say we have the 86,400 seconds. If we approached it like we would if we had $86,400 in a day that we had to spend by the end of the day, how would you approach spending or investing that money if you knew that at the end of the day it was gone? You had to use it. So would you invest it in things that created legacy? Would you invest it in things that enhanced your health? Would you invest it in things that helped your family to excel? Would you invest it in things that brought you joy? I would hope you would invest that $86,000 wisely and not just, buy some crazy stuff. But with money, we know that ideally you can get money back at the end of the day. People are printing money in the government consistently. It's paper. But one thing that we can't get back is time. When that time goes, it's gone. I can't go back to yesterday. You can't go back to yesterday. We have the present moment right now where we are. And are we investing our time in things that matter? And when we think about that, if we go through life with the understanding of scripture, it talks about this. Psalms 90:12 says, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And approaching life, understanding that we have a certain amount of seconds, certain amount of hours in a day. We want to approach our time stewarding it well, operating from a place of wisdom as we navigate each and every moment of our lives, because life is a vapor. Time is not promised. Another scripture, James 4:14 says, what is your life? You are a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Hmm. This really, when I think about this scripture, it hits home for me because I think about those moments in life where there were people who I knew, maybe from my church community, for example, or I met them at seminary or some part of my life. And they were here one day and then they were gone the next. I remember there was one gentleman who passed away at my church, and he was just Mr. Fashion. I mean, he was just always dressed to the nine. He had a great laugh. It was just one of those laughs that was distinct, and I just enjoyed his company, and we didn't talk all the time, but he was someone who I appreciated. And I remember thinking to myself, I haven't seen him at church lately. I wonder what's going on with him. You know how sometimes people pass through your mind. You think about them, but because life happens and we get busy and caught up in the rat race, we neglect to actually reach out to that person when they cross our mind. And so that's what happened with me. And then I hear over the announcements several weeks later that he had passed away. And I was wrecked. I was wrecked because that was a life that I valued. But because of me being so caught up in all the things, I didn't reach out. I didn't make time for him. And that happens. There are people who are on our list to say, I should visit them in the hospital. I should give them a call. I want to grab coffee with them. I want to spend more time with this individual. But we feel like we have more time to get around to that thing. Reality, we don't know how much time we have with that individual or how long they will be here, how long we will be here for that matter, because scripture says your life is a vapor and it can vanish like that. And when we approach life with that understanding that I can't just continue to just operate as if I have 30, 40 years from now and just assume that that's fact. Hopefully we do live until we old gray and die at the age of 100 or whatever age. But because we don't know that's the case for sure, how are we approaching life with a sense of urgency, prioritizing the things that matter? And the other thing that I often think about is what does matter to us most. Like when we go through our life, sometimes we can get caught up with all of the minutia, the drama, the busyness, and we don't actually make time for the things that matter most. Stephen Covey did a original demonstration in the 7 habits of highly effective people. And in this demonstration, it was a great visualization to help us to understand our priorities in life and more so make time for the priorities. Because I'm willing to wager, if you're listening to this show right now, your faith is a priority for you, right? So we have our spirituality, our relationship with God. If I were to ask you your top priorities, I believe that will fall somewhere in there. Okay. So we have that as a priority. Then hopefully health might be one. We think about that because health is wealth. If we don't have our health, then, you know, we can't be here, right? Or we can't enjoy the things that we love. So maybe health is a priority, maybe family or chosen family. I call a lot of my friends my chosen family because they are dear to me. So relationships that matter to us. It might be your ministry work that you do, or you have a job that's like a passion of yours. So these are different priorities that we have. I want you to actually think about that and maybe take some time after this episode to reflect, what are my priorities? Now, going back to the Stephen Covey analogy, he talked about describing our priorities as rocks. Imagine that you're holding a rock. All right. And then in contrast, we have all the other stuff that can keep us busy, and that's the sand. Now, we are trying to fit all of the things that matter, particularly the priorities, along with some of the sand, inside of a jar. Now, let's pretend a jar is representation of everything that we can fit within a year. It's confined to that one time period. Within 1 year, we're trying to fit our priorities and the sand around all those things to fit into the jar. Now, if, for example, you try to put all of the sand in the jar first, which is the busy minutia stuff, what can happen is not enough room for your priorities to all fit in the jar because it's filled up with sand, which is the minutia distraction type stuff. But in contrast, if you put the rocks in first, which is your priorities, family, health, the things that matter to you, and then you throw the sand in, the sand will get in where it fits in, so to speak, around those things, but your priorities won't get lost in the sauce. And that's the concept that I want to drive home. We want to identify and prioritize what matters most, putting that in our schedule, our agenda first, protecting those things first. And then everything else, it fits in around that. I was reading this book, Buy Back Your Time. He talked about how he actually designed his perfect week and his perfect year. And in his perfect year, he identified the things that matter most for him. Like, okay, I want to make sure I have 3 vacations a year, for example. I want to make sure that I am working out and taking care of my health. I want to make sure that I go visit this place or I run a marathon. And so, what he would do with his wife is he would actually identify those dates ahead of time, block them off, protect that time. And then everything else has to follow suit around those things. And that, my brothers and sisters, is being intentional with your time. That is a strategy to make sure that the rocks get in first and then everything else follows suit around that. And that is a suggestion that I have for you to implement right away as I'm working to do the same thing. Because what I'm learning is that a lot of times I'll say things like, oh, I don't have time to take a vacation. Oh, I don't have time to go to the gym. Oh, I don't have time to see these people. And I'm just like, wait a minute here. For certain things that are priority, we make time. And if we continue to say, I don't have time, or I'm going to get to do something and this arbitrary point of life, like I will go on this vacation when I retire, that's assuming that that's guaranteed. And we know we just covered that earlier, that nothing is guaranteed. So, what are we putting off for tomorrow? That God might be saying, we need to do this today. What do we need to shift so that we can steward our time better, more wisely? And so these are questions that I have. These are questions that I want to wrestle with you for this show. And so we're going to take a quick commercial break. And then when we get back, we're going to continue to have this conversation on how we can steward our time wisely. I'll see you after commercial break.
I'll never forgive you for what you did to me.
I feel so dirty.
I just don't know who I am anymore.
I can't believe I'll never see him again.
I've got to be strong for my family.
I can't let him see me cry.
What happens in this house stays in this house.
I can't take this anymore. I feel like I'm living my entire life behind a mask.
The mask is the keeper of secrets and master of illusions. It despises authenticity, fears transparency, and knows no vulnerability. The mask will stop at nothing to keep its image intact and emotions at bay. In its simplest form, the mask is the facade we project to the world. But what is hidden in the dark will come to light. Even if we master the art of wearing the mask, the pain that we've buried has the power to hold us captive in the shackles of shame, anger, and despair. But there is power greater than our pain, greater than our past, and greater than what the world says about us. There is a God who can heal us from our pain and can free us from defining our values based on the world's standards. There is hope, and you can embark on your journey towards freedom by reading the book Breaking the Power of the Mask by author and motivational speaker Jocelyn Jones. Discover the joy and healing that rightfully belongs to you. No more shame, no more fear, and no more hiding behind the mask.
I'm breaking the power.
I'm breaking the power.
I'm breaking the power of the mask.
Get your copy today by visiting breakingthemask.com.
Welcome back. So the first part of our time together, we've really been diving deep into this idea of investing our time wisely, being a good steward over the time that we are granted here while we are on earth, because we realize that life is but a vapor and tomorrow is not promised. And so how can we live and operate from a sense of urgency as we navigate our day to day? And, another thing that I've been really thinking about lately is how time seems to fly. You know, I think back to when I was younger. I remember being 19 years old in undergrad. I went to the University of Iowa. And I had some friends who were older. They were maybe around 21, 22. And I remember I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to be 21 so I could get into the clubs. Now, I hear you. You're judging me right now, but I wasn't saved back then. I wanted to be out partying, kicking it. I did kick it back in the day, right? And so I really couldn't wait to be 21. And I remember talking to my mom about this, and she was like, "Oh, baby, don't rush it. You will be 21 soon enough. And I'm telling you, once you hit 21, time is going to fly." And I'm like, "Yeah, Ma, whatever." 20 years later, I'm like, whoa, time, slow down. I can't dye my hair fast enough to keep up with the grays because I'm aging. Things aren't, working like they used to do. I can't just get up out of bed and run a whole mile without stretching. I'll hurt myself. And so when we realize that we are getting older, we are, seeing time go by so fast. I mean, it seems like it was just the new year, and I'm recording this right now in the spring, and I'm like, that was just a blink ago. And with that perspective, it's changing how I'm looking at time because it does go by fast. It really does feel like a vapor, as scripture does say. And so we can literally seem like we wake up and it's a year from now and we still haven't done what we said we were going to do because we might not have been intentional about writing the book, starting the nonprofit, beginning this initiative that God has been dealing with us about, that thing. And for me, I really have wrestled with that because I don't want to close my eyes for the last time when God brings me to glory and be on my deathbed saying, "Man, I wish I did that thing. I wish I wrote that book. I wish I got my PhD. I wish I started a family. I wish I took that chance. I wish, I wish, I wish." And I heard someone say this before. They said that oftentimes when people are on their last days of life, they don't regret what they did do so much as they regret what they didn't do, what they didn't try, what they didn't go after. And that is something that resonates with me because there's a lot of things that we have been putting off because we're operating like we have an abundance of time versus operating with the sense of urgency that, hey, like my mom was doing with the clock situation earlier in this segment, she had shifted her outlook to say, I'm going to operate like I don't have as much time so I can get on a good foot and move. And so with that, I'm really asking myself to approach each and every day differently, saying, hey, instead of you saying, oh, I'm going to do that thing someday, be intentional about saying, okay, is this a real priority for me? And if it is a priority for me, how can I be more intentional and concrete about when I'm seeking to do this? And Lord willing, if I am able to have another day or another year or another 3 years, when is this in my timeline? How am I going to move this forward? And in order for me to move this thing forward, then let me make sure that I'm eliminating certain distractions in my life that are preventing me from being effective in the things that really matter. Because every time you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. And going back to that example of the rocks and the sand, every time we say yes to the sands of life, if you will, the distractions, the minutia, the busy work, then we are saying no to time focused on our priorities. And that changes things when you approach life saying, be careful, Ephesians 5:15-16, be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most out of every opportunity. And I'm thinking in terms of making the most out of each and every day. And I'm creating a habit of reflection at the end of the night to say, okay, how did I steward my time today? Okay, did I spend time on the things that mattered most? Did I accomplish my priorities? Did I even identify my priorities for this day? Or did I just let the day happen to me? Was I reactive today? Meaning just, reacting to what was thrown at me? Or was I intentional today? Was I intentional saying, I'm going to command my morning, I'm going to command my day, I'm not going to be reactive. I might respond to certain things, but I am focused on the things that matter. When you approach life like that, you get to the place where all the noise that is vying for your attention, maybe social media, maybe the rhetoric of the day, whatever's hot, whatever's not, all the stuff that's going on, you see it as what it is, which is distractions. And you become focused on the things that give you joy, the things that fill your cup, the things that you will thank your future self for later. And I often think about that because some of the things that we do now, we're either going to thank ourselves for later, if we're blessed to see another 10, 20 years, or we're going to have regrets for later. There's another saying, particularly in those who are in the coaching field, is choose your pain. Because disciplining yourself to do the things now that are difficult, but have long-term benefits later, it's still pain to discipline yourself, but you'll thank yourself for that later because that pays off, that bears fruit. Or you can choose the pain of not doing the things that you need to do right now, and you're going to pay for it later and experience pain later. And that pain, that could be a lot more difficult down the road. Particularly, for example, it might be as it relates to our health. These things add up. Every decision that we make in this moment, it adds up. We might not see it right now, but again, over time, it adds up. And the effects of our decisions now, it manifests later. So how are we investing and planting seeds right now for the future version of ourselves? So again, if the Lord allows us to see 10, 20 years, we will be thanking ourselves now for the decisions, or we'll be thanking ourselves later for the decisions that we make now. And that speaks to even going back to finances. If we are actually talking about finances, how are we stewarding our money? How are we spending that? These are things that we will thank ourselves for later if we are stewarding these things well now. So, as I conclude our time together, I really want to ask you a couple questions. Are you drifting through life or are you designing it? That is one. Are you just allowing yourself to go through life like it's just like a breeze and you're just like, oh, la, 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 with no intentionality? Or are you designing the life that you desire to have? If you only had 6 months to live, this is my second question. If you if you knew you only had 6 months to live, how would you live differently? Would you love harder? Would you go and see parts of the world that you've been putting off? Would you say certain things that you would never dare to say, but you've been thinking and wanted to say your entire life? How would you show up differently in this world if you knew you only had 6 months to live? Man, I believe I would show up differently. I think back to COVID when that first happened. Oh, that just had everybody putting things in perspective of what mattered. What did I really care about when we have a whole pandemic happening and we didn't know what was going to happen back in March of 2020 when the world seemed like it was shutting down? And so when we go back to that frame of reference and we think about, okay, I'm tripping over the fact that Starbucks messed up my order. Is that worth my energy to be mad about that when we got all these things happening in the world right now? We got bigger things to focus on, right? So now we might not be in the middle of a global pandemic, but if we had that same point of reference to say, I'm not giving these little small things my energy. I'm going to focus on the things that really matter, approaching life as if I have a sense of urgency. I don't have as much time as I think I have. So, what do I need to do now in this moment? And know that we don't need to have a terminal diagnosis or a pandemic to be in that frame of mind, to go through life with intentionality, knowing, okay, I'm going to put my priorities first. I'm going to say to that person, I love them. I'm going to say to that person, I forgive them. I'm not going to bring my past into my present to continue to control me. I'm going to focus on my healing. I'm going to focus on producing and building that ministry, starting that nonprofit, writing that book, stepping out on faith, doing what God has been telling me to do for how long. I'm going to do that thing because I'm going to live for this moment, in this moment, and I'm going to steward my time wisely. So I hope today's episode encouraged you. And if it did, I'm going to invite you to do a couple things for me. First, subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, do the same, Spotify. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave a review for me. I love seeing reviews. It gives me encouragement, and I want to see what's resonating with you so I can provide you with more of the things that impact and help you on your journey. So that is it for this episode, family. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, you stay encouraged and you keep your faith on the journey. I'll see you soon, family.